ask those questions, and the problem is that they've already contractually agreed to them. That's why they're still doing it. They agreed to them and raced to the top, and here's the other thing. I'll get right back to you, Jeff. Let me finish my point. There's two things they obligated us to. Race to the top money and the waiver for No Child Left Behind. You remember that? No Child Left Behind was enacted in the 1980s under the Bush administration. And it said that all children have to meet these certain proficient levels, right? And so it was like standards for performance, academic performance. And the whole country went, oh my gosh, their standards, they're so hard, we will never make it. So in order to get a waiver out of that No Child Left Behind Act, schools started writing their obligations. Okay, we will do these things if you give us a waiver so we don't have to follow that act. Okay, so they've done this all this time. Now, Obama came in recently, in his last term, and he said, okay, you know what, I'm going to revise that act, and I'm going to make every school district comply with 100% of their students on certain criteria. And every state said there's no way we could do that. No way. We would fail immediately if we had to follow that. So everybody scrambled to put together an application to get that waiver again, because now they had to apply for a new waiver, right? Because he changed the act. Now the waiver includes, guess what? These 6 things. So they obligated us to a waiver using Common Core and Park assessments. So there's 2 reasons they feel like they can't pull out of it now. Even though we can actually sit here and rationale say it doesn't make sense. Why are you doing this? It's hundreds of millions of dollars invested in something that's not even tested, not been piloted, not benchmarked anywhere. Why would we do that? We have states that have done this. It's been tested, tried, true, we know. And we wouldn't have to spend all this kind of money on all brand new textbooks. Right? So it doesn't make sense. But because of those 2 obligations, they feel like they can't back out. Now, Jeff raised the question this morning. He said, why not, just like with the whole Medicare expansion, they're saying it's a done deal, can't do it, can't back off. Well, yes, we can. I don't believe they know who they're talking to. I mean, this is Ohio, and we're not likely to sit still and say, yeah, sorry about your luck.
Kelly, that's I want to know, hey Jim, if you remember when you had the wonderful speakers you had this year, fabulous. Got to thank you for that. The gentleman that came and spoke about Buckeye Institute. Remember they talked about going against K6 reasons because if we get in, we can't get out. We're obligated. There's a perfect example of it again. I mean, we're just going down the rabbit's hole again.
Right, and when we were having that Common Core debate, guys, if you go to OSBLC.com and click on Common Core debate, I am sorry, but it's 2.5 hours, but it is a very enlightening 2.5 hours. And you can just watch it in 20-minute segments if you want to, but get it watched. But what C. Todd Jones, he is a Ohio School Board member, and he was a proponent of Common Core. So he's telling us, why it's good, why we need to accept it. He said himself that he believes, and it's in that little flyer I gave you, that it's going to crumble. Well, when does the darn thing crumble? Does it crumble after we've spent hundreds of millions of dollars getting all these new textbooks and our children are further indoctrinated in those textbooks and we can't get rid of them because we can't afford to replace them? I mean, when does the darn thing crumble? Let's not wait. It could crumble now. And we have until June 30th to convince the governor and the legislators to take it out of the budget bill. Now, the only thing they've done so far was to remove the word PARRC. That's all they removed. They did not remove the money that was in that line item. So if you hear Common Core's out, you can hear Glenn Beck is talking about it.
Yeah.
And he keeps saying Ohio's done away with it. That is not true. That he's way ahead of, I hope that happens, but that is not true. Ohio has not done anything. They took a word out of the budget. They told me after they did it that we're still obligated to do it. We're under contract to do it.
I was there.
So they can say we're out, or they can say we're obligated, can't get out. That's not true. We absolutely can. You can opt out right now before everybody spends the money. We are not ready in Springboro. We're putting the technology in. It's going to cost us about $4 million over the next 5 years to put all this technology in. We have it in our budget, but most schools don't. So that means it's going to come to you. So if it doesn't affect you, you know, in your philosophy, you don't believe in this, maybe it affects your pocketbook and you'll get on the phone and write letters and tell them, no, drop out. Ohioans will not accept this. Or, this is a good reason we want school choice. The problem is all the school choices that you have, charter, conversion, private, homeschool, they all have to comply with Common Core as well. Right? So there really is no school choice, right? I mean, it's kind of silly to say, I'm going to increase vouchers. Well, everybody's taught the same stuff. Does it really matter? Okay, so complaints not involving enough teachers and citizens, that's for the last two things, which is, I think that's absolutely valid. But I think there's been resistance and pushback from our teaching profession because it involves change. And change is difficult for anybody. Third grade reading guarantee. Ohio's third grade reading guarantee was part of a package of education policy backed by Governor Kasich and approved by the state lawmakers in spring of 2012 as a part of Senate Bill 316. The update on Tuesday, September 11th, the board did vote to approve the cut scores of 390 and then 392. The problem, here's what I'm saying, I wish we could go further. I'm absolutely appreciating what we've done so far, but those scores, guys, remember I showed you the percent of the questions you have to get correct to be proficient? The scores that they're accepting, 390, 392, are less than proficient. But the good news is it's above basic, which is the next lower level down. So I'm not sure we're raising the bar in this. I think we're making people nervous, and sometimes that helps, but it starts the bar. Maybe that's what we have to do, is we have to start low and eke it up. I don't know, I'm grateful for small favors at this point. Several states, including Florida and Texas, have the third grade reading guarantee in place, and they have for quite a while, about a decade. Florida has seen a percentage of fourth graders who can read at the fourth grade level rise after putting the requirements in place, but Texas really has not. It might be in how they're implementing it. Again, I think we just need to watch these other states, see what they're doing, use the things that work and don't use the things that don't. Okay, now OTES, that was the second thing on that list. Ohio Teacher Evaluations. This was just a little piece I got. Again, nobody's implemented these tools yet except for Race to the Top districts have piloted these tools. So we're using some of their models and some of their pilot instruments. But this was just a superintendent survey, but this is the number of superintendents who believe that measures of student growth, that's been highly contested by the teaching profession. And the nervousness is that if you're trying to measure student growth, what if one teacher gets a whole classroom of inclusion students? And those are usually special ed or somehow they need extra help. So if you've got a whole classroom and you've got quite a few inclusion students, you know that as one human being, you can't address all those concerns. You've got people at the upper end of the continuum, the education achievement continuum, who are probably not going to progress as fast as they should, even if you try to get the lower end achieving. So it's very stressful to say, how are you going to measure me against a teacher over here that doesn't have those kinds of students in their classroom? That's absolutely valid. So they've used now an instrument that measures a year's worth of progress. So if that student, let's say, is a special ed and needs an aid and needs a lot of extra assistance, gets 1 year of progress, you still get credit for that progress. So it doesn't matter where that student is on the continuum, they need 1 year of progress. Some students achieve 1.5. Okay. I think this gives good reason. Here's one of my suggestions, is that we cluster. For quite a while now, there's been a philosophy that shifted from put everybody in the classroom together, right? They've been doing that quite a bit. Some schools then still take out the gifted, some schools take out the remedial and put them in separate classrooms. And there's been some pushback on doing that. I believe that works. So that's my philosophy, that's what I've seen. As a parent, you get concerned, either that your special ed student's not getting the attention they need or that your gifted student's not getting what they need. And I appreciate them being pulled out and put into different classes. That would stimulate them. I worried when mine were young that they were going to get bored. And when students get bored at either end of the continuum, they start disrupting class. Now everybody suffers. I think we're better off clustering them into classrooms with like students so that we can address and move forward on their scale, their time frame. But then some superintendents believe that their districts incorporated student growth, that they have incorporated This is the number, I guess, that evaluations, student assessment of and your evaluations improve education. So most superintendents believe that adding this component, student achievement, will help teachers achieve more education, or students achieve more education. OTES has its critics. The critics say Ohio teacher evaluation system is dishonest, unrealistic, and not fully supported by academic research. I'm just giving you some of the negatives. I disagree. I think we have to do something, and I think that this tool that we're using will have to be vetted, will have to be piloted, will have to be manipulated, and we'll get to a better tool. But we have to start somewhere. Okay, OTES. Here's what happens now in the new teacher evaluation system. Before, teachers were evaluated, but it was 100% teacher performance. So a principal would go in and observe a classroom and say, yep, she was organized. Yep, he had his planning all done ahead of time. Yes, the classroom was organized, and yes, it looked neat. Yes, there was interaction with students, but it didn't have anything to do previous to now with the student growth. So now 50% of the instrument is their kind of like professional standards. The other 50% is student growth. So that's something. I think that's getting well publicized now. There are 4 different levels that a teacher will fall in once they get these results back. They will either be called accomplished, proficient, yikes, now that word has different meaning to me, developing, and ineffective. Well, what I was saying is it's very helpful if teachers would help us get through this learning curve, and I think they will, I think they're getting on it, because certainly really good teachers want to be recognized as really good teachers, and they know they are. So they're helping us develop this tool. But if you're termed accomplished, I would think that that teacher can go anywhere and get a job. So categorizing them will make them more marketable, and will make them want to get to be a better teacher. Ohio's proposed new accountability system. That's the A through F grading system for our districts. Achievement, okay, I'll just read through these real quick. What they're going to be looking at now is achievement, gap closing, graduation rate, progress, little description, K through 3 literacy, and prepared for success. Those are all the things, if you go to that website, you're going to see those categories for your school districts, and you're going to see a grade for each of your buildings on those. And that's going to help you know, if my child's going over to this building got an F on one of these categories, I'm concerned. And you can go and say, how are we addressing that issue? What are you doing for that? Because I see that that's not working for our students. What are you going to do? It's all about communication, and now that we know where we're failing, we can address them. Okay, so here's the A through F grading system. Right now in the state of Ohio, we have, 350, something like that, more than that. 380 schools that are excellent and excellent with distinction. See that? When we put this new A through F grading system in, only 22 will be graded A, overall A. That's being a bit more honest, because that's about what we would think, wouldn't we? That we have some schools that are way up there, and then we have schools that need to move up. But at least gives us somewhere to go. And we found out when they gave us this presentation, Tom Gunlock of the Ohio School Board will come to Medina and he'll give you a presentation on this stuff, and it's great. Because then everybody knows at the same time. The teachers, the administrators, everybody knows what's going on in your community. So I would advise you to do that. But he brought this into us. And we found out that Springboro, as great as we thought we were, we've always been excellent with distinction. So, there's no improving that, right? He said now with the new system, we're only a B. And that didn't go over well, could you imagine? And he was calling us mediocre. And people in the audience really did freak out and got up at that podium and told him off. How dare you call us mediocre? But I'm grateful as a parent. I want to know where our deficiencies are, and I want us to address them. So everybody should be grateful that we're doing something. The problem with this, see, I'm always going to say the downside. The problem with this is, remember I said that 75% of your students must be proficient or above? The only change this makes is that now 80% of your students need to be proficient or above. The cut scores are still the cut scores. Yeah, really. myself, you go, really? It's like a total deflation. I really thought that we were gonna raise that bar, and I think we will. I think that's the objective. Start here, you know, and move. So as long as, again, we're acknowledging we're gonna move slow, really slow. I'm not sure that's real helpful yet, but if that's how it translates, that's helpful. Okay, this is fairly long, but this is about 165. I told you about that already, so we probably don't need to read this. But when you go to Senate Bill 165 of the 129th General Assembly, you see a whole lot of narrative. I just picked out one of the paragraphs that made a lot of sense. But you can see the words original text of the Declaration of Independence, Northwest Ordinance, Constitution of the United States and its amendments, and the Basic Bill of Rights, Ohio Constitution, in their original context. So it says that throughout here. And what does its original context mean to you guys? What does that mean? Why would they put this in law? That's pretty big to put it in law. Why would they do that? Yeah, but what's the original context? What do you think they were getting at here? Yeah, yeah, there's interpretations. So what are they trying to get us to talk about in the classroom that we haven't been talking about? Yeah, and where'd it come from? It came from their faith. So we've been omitting all of the faith-based documents from our history. And we've been removing the factors of Christianity from these documents. When now, if you have to teach the original context, these guys, the context is their faith guided them to these documents. And so we have to start talking about their faith. So even our legislators are saying, stop omitting American history from American history documents. That was a part of this, and it's not illegal to talk about their faith and how they came about these documents. God's mentioned in them. You know, Pledge of Allegiance, all that. Now, I just got another, because I keep getting these, threatening letter from the ACLU. Anytime we talk about putting faith back in any of our history, the bullies stand up and pound their chest. Again, I don't think they know who they're talking to. Did you have a question?
That was my comment.
The ACLU writes letters. I didn't even read it. I just read ACLU because the secretary handed it to us. Get lost. Come on, you big bullies. You mean I can't teach my children that the founding fathers were faithful people?
They used to go back into school, all schools, back to the ACLU.
That's what this is saying. So again, I'm grateful. The people of the state are getting it. So we need to always thank them for the things they're doing that are helpful to education. This is a biggie in my book. Common Core, I've kind of talked about that, and I can absolutely answer any questions, but I thought you guys will get really tired of hearing me talk. But Common Core and Park Assessment, so it's labeled like this, PARRC. That's the standardized test that's coming. It's not even been written yet, and we've obligated ourselves to it. Now, who do you think is writing that?
Yeah.
It's the federal government writing it. How do you think it's going to come out? Do you think the original context of our Founding Father documents will be anywhere in it?
No.
No. Do you think abstinence or subjects that are controversial will be anywhere in it? That was why we had a big crowd the other night, by the way. We're just trying to add to a policy. There are two policies. One was the Constitution Day and our recommended resources. They didn't like that. The other thing was there is controversial issues. So far, almost every district has a controversial issues policy. The policy says that a teacher should be teaching both sides of a controversial issue. And it lists sex education, let's see here, there's two others. And they were fairly benign. I think we all know what parts of sex education they're teaching. They're not teaching abstinence. So I don't know what both sides of sex education is. But we went ahead and wrote in some things that they objected to. So part of that was sex education abstinence, evolution, creationism. When we just did these, we kind of tried to define what those controversial issues are that we should be covering both sides of. That's what the ACLU is all up in arms with. Anytime you use the word creationism, and that was by accident, that was my fellow board member, he said, really, it could be intelligent design. I don't care, it doesn't have to be, but the problem is we're not able to, in our books, our textbooks mention nothing about another theory of mankind. They just mentioned evolution is fact. And I'm thinking, if we go to the Discovery Institute and use some of their materials, they blow gigantic holes in the Darwin theory of evolution. There's huge holes in it. So if we're really trying to teach our children critical thinking, then why aren't we trying to say there are other theories? The Muslims have this theory. Christians have this theory. We don't know what it is because evolution has some big holes in it. There's some science dealing with that, and that's the background of that. This one's faith-based, this one's faith-based. You know, I don't see any problem with presenting the opportunities to talk. And yet the ACLU thinks we shouldn't even have a conversation. It's pretty offensive to a Christian to say we can't even have the conversation in your child's school day. Anyway, OSBLC, that's my organization that myself and several other school board members from across the state formed. We formed it because we felt like school board members were not being coached to tell the truth. We felt that school board members are simply tools to pass levies. And we are told that we're to be cheerleaders for our district, that we're not to air dirty laundry, don't take anybody by surprise at a board meeting, don't ask questions out in public. Nonsense. I don't believe board members are hired by you to sit there and just say yes to everything on the agenda. I think their job is to ask the questions. But anyway, here's the things that we're going to start suggesting. And you're the first victims of my draft. I sent this off this morning at 3 o'clock. Nobody was up to talk to me this morning. But I sent this off to my fellow board members and our legislative analysts because I want her to help me draft this list. But here's my initial suggestions, okay? Require all pay and benefits to be paired with community pay and benefits. Everyone works in that case to prosper in a community. Because here's what I'm saying, is that what I've witnessed, and I've done at least 40 different presentations across the state, and I always compare